Today, we're going to talk about how one man built an empire that has lasted for over 2,500 years. But here's the thing, he wasn't a king or a general. He was a teacher, and his empire wasn't built on territory, but on character.
To really get Confucius, you have to picture the world he was born into. So imagine ancient China, over 2,500 years ago. It wasn't one unified country. It was a violent, chaotic patchwork of states that were locked in this constant, brutal struggle for survival. Society itself was literally tearing apart at the seams. You had leaders who cared way more about power than the people they were supposed to be serving. And because of that, a deep sense of mistrust just poisoned everything. And this kind of rot, it doesn't just stay at the top, it trickles all the way down. Even families, the very bedrock of civilization, were cracking under the strain of all that chaos and suspicion.
So that was the big question of the day. When everything is completely broken, where do you even begin to rebuild? Well, one man believed he had the answer. And it didn't involve bigger armies or a bunch of new laws. It started with something way more fundamental, better human behavior. So who was this guy? He wasn't royalty, he wasn't a military genius, he was, quite simply, a teacher. His name was Confucius, or Master Kong, born way back in 551 BCE. We know him by the Latin version of his name, Confucius. He grew up without much money, but he had this incredible hunger for learning. And living through the absolute chaos of the Warring States period, he came to a pretty profound conclusion. The root of the problem wasn't bad politics. It was bad behavior. Okay, so if bad behavior was the problem, Confucius needed a solution. And what he developed was basically a blueprint for a better society, built on 4 huge pillars designed to rebuild civilization from the individual up. And here they are, the 4 core concepts. It all kicks off with respect. From there, it expands out with the Golden Rule. Then you have this really radical idea about education for all. And the whole point of all of this, the ultimate goal, becoming a junzi, or a truly superior person. All right, let's break each of these down. So, pillar number 1, respect, or what's known as filial piety. For Confucius, society doesn't start in the palace. It starts at home. He taught that a stable family, where children respect their parents, the young respect their elders, and everybody honors their ancestors, that's a tiny version of a healthy state. A strong nation, he said, is just a collection of strong families. Next up is his second and probably most famous teaching. You've definitely heard it before. It's often called the Golden Rule. Confucius put it like this: do not do to others what you would not want done to you. It's so simple, but it's an incredibly powerful guide for every human interaction. It's the moral foundation for a just society. Now, this next idea, this was a real game changer. Back in his day, power was a birthright. You ruled because your father ruled. That's it. Confucius completely rejected that. He argued that leadership shouldn't be inherited. It should be earned based on your wisdom and your skill. And the path to that wisdom? Education, which he believed should be for everyone, not just the rich. And that brings us to the final pillar, the ultimate goal of his entire philosophy, the junzi. This is the ideal, superior person that he believed everyone should try to become. And a junzi isn't defined by money or power, but by character. It's about being honest, kind, having integrity, and being in control of your emotions. Confucius believed a society led by people like that would just naturally be a peaceful and just place. So Confucius has this incredible blueprint for a better world. You would think the rulers of his day would be eager to listen. Well, they weren't. What's really fascinating is that Confucius just wasn't a success in his own lifetime. He traveled from state to state, offering his wisdom, but most rulers just weren't interested. It was a time of war, and they wanted battlefield tactics, not lessons on ethics. He died without ever getting a major position of power, but he never stopped teaching. And after his death, his students did something that would literally change history. They collected all his sayings and his conversations into a book called the Analects. And this one book became the tiny seed from which his entire empire of ideas would grow. This timeline really shows you just how patient an idea can be. It took centuries, but his philosophy eventually took root. The Han Dynasty made it the official state ideology. Then, much later, his teachings became the basis for China's famous civil service exams, a system of rule by merit that lasted for over 1,000 years. His impact wasn't immediate, but wow, was it immense. And it continues today.
Just let that number sink in. For over 2,000 years, to be an educated person or a government official in China meant you were totally steeped in the teachings of Confucius. His ideas weren't just a philosophy, they became the actual operating system for one of the world's great civilizations. And his influence didn't stop at China's borders. His philosophy traveled all across East Asia, and it profoundly shaped the cultures of places like Korea, Japan, and Vietnam. When you see some of the core cultural values in these societies today, like that deep respect for elders, the importance of family, and this reference for education, you're seeing the long echo of Master Kong.
So, okay, this was all thousands of years ago. What does any of this have to do with us today? Why does an ancient Chinese philosopher still matter?
Well, a key reason he still matters is his focus on slow, steady self-improvement. For Confucius, becoming a better person was a lifelong journey. This quote captures it perfectly. It does not matter how slowly you go as long as you do not stop. It's not about some sudden, massive transformation. It's about consistent, daily effort. And that is timeless advice for any goal you might have.
In the end, Confucius built an empire not with armies or walls, but with a simple idea about how we should treat one another. His entire philosophy really just comes down to human relationships. So I'll leave you with this question, and it's based on his most famous teaching. If every single person lived by the golden rule just for one day, how profoundly different would our world be?